We're back in the book of Hebrews this morning. We're at chapter 2. We finished verses 1 through 4 last time. We started verse 5 today. We've been in the book of Hebrews so far. We have seen that God has spoken to us through two major seasons. One is what we call the Old Testament, in which He spoke through the prophets and angels. And then we come to the New Testament where He spoke through His Son. And we've been seeing that God has been telling us that His Son is superior to the prophets and angels. And the things that He spoke have replaced the things that the prophets and the angels spoke. It has fulfilled it. Not saying that the Old Testament is not important to us. The New Testament clearly tells us it is important to us. It gives us a good history. It tells us about God's dealings with folks. And the Old Testament is a tremendous place to read when you want to see God acting in a personal way, involved in people's lives, involved in His world. But the New Testament comes along, and Jesus and the New Testament have fulfilled those promises and those things out of the Old Testament. And as we've been looking at this, we've seen that the Bible has said that Jesus, God's Son, has been superior to the prophets and the angels. We've been in this last section talking about how He was superior to the angels. And then as we started chapter 2, we saw that the Bible stopped in that line of thought and gave us this tremendous warning. In a way, it's really an invitation in the way of a warning to receive the gospel and be saved. And it told us that if God punished those who ignored the Old Testament, those who ignored His word through the prophets and the angels, and He punished them for their disobedience, He punished them for their hearing and not obeying the word of God, then what in the world would He do for those who fail to hear what His Son's got to say in the New Testament? So He's saying to us, He's giving us this great warning and this great plea to be saved, to obey the gospel and be saved, because it is a serious matter to ignore what God has said through His Son. Then we come to verse 5, and He kind of picks back up on this idea of the Bible picks back up on this idea of Jesus being superior. And He's superior again to angels and to men in this lesson. And we're going to try to get down at least through verse 9 this morning. And we're going to see that the superiority of Jesus continues over angels and over men. And then in verse 9, He's going to begin to list some things about Jesus that identify Him as being superior. So let's start at verse 5. The Bible says, "For unto the angels hath He not put in subjection the world to come, whereof we speak." Now, in the King James English, that's a little bit confusing. If you've got a more modern translation, you probably could understand that verse better. Let me read it to you from some other translations that will help you to better understand what He's saying. For instance, in the New American Standard, that verse is translated this way: "For He did not subject to angels the world to come." In the English Standard Version, it's translated, "Now it was not to angels that God subjected the world to come." It is not to angels that He has subjected the world to come. What He's saying is, God didn't give angels authority over the world that's going to come. His point is now, remember, that Jesus is superior to angels. Jesus is going to be the one who's going to be superior in the world to come. God didn't give angels are good, and they're fascinating, and they have a lot of power and a lot of authority in this world, but God didn't see fit to give them the authority over His world. Now, He's going to start in just a minute. We're going to see that He gave that authority to man. Man's lost it, but he's given that authority to man, and man's going to have authority over the world to come under the headship of Jesus, but it wasn't angels. And so he's saying, as important as angels are, and as interesting as they are, and as much as they've had to do with God's economy in the past, God didn't see fit to put them in charge of, to rule over those things that are to come. The word subjection there is a military word. It means an officer who's in command of a group of people, and he arranges them as it pleases him. That word is for a commanding officer in the army who's been given a group of men who arranges them in a way that pleases him. He's got the rule over. And he's saying, in the world to come, God didn't give angels the authority to arrange things like they want. Right? That's not their place. The word for world here is not the common word for world. That would be cosmos. It means ages. It is the word for inhabited earth. In other words, the world that he's talking about here is mankind, the human part of the world. And he's saying God did not give to angels the privilege to rule over and arrange humankind like they want to. That privilege is going to come to men under the headship of God to arrange the things in the world to come. But it's not given to angels. So his point here is that angels are not the superior ones. In fact, they're not even in the world to come going to be superior to mankind, let alone to Jesus. All right? So then we come to verse 6. And verse 6 through verse 8 is another very interesting passage that is a quote from Psalm 8. But let's read it here, and then we're going to turn to the Psalm, and we're going to read it from the Psalm, because reading the Psalm gives us a much better idea of what's in view here. He says in verse 6, "But one in a certain place testified, saying," and that certain place, if you want to put your note in your Bible, is Psalm 8. Psalm 8 is where that comes into play. "One in a certain place testified, saying, What is man that thou art mindful of him, or the son of man that thou visited him? Thou madest him a little lower than the angels, and thou crownest him with glory and honor, and didst set him over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things in subjection under his feet, for in that he put all things in subjection under him, he left nothing that is not put under him. But now we see not yet all things put under him." Now, if you're not careful in reading this, you will think that is talking about Jesus. But it's not. Jesus doesn't come into play into verse 9. This is talking about man. The word for man here is a generic term for man, meaning mankind. It doesn't mean just males. It's talking about human beings. Women are included in this. He's saying that God is given to human beings these privileges. Now turn in your Bible back to Psalm 8, and let's read it from the Psalm, and I think we will get a better feel for what the Bible is saying to us in the book of Hebrews if we read it out of the Psalm. I can't get to Psalms 8. I jumped from Job to Proverbs every time I try to go through this. All right, Psalm 8. Let's start at verse 3. He says, "When I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained, what is man?" You see, what the psalmist is saying, and this psalm's attributed to David, what David's saying is, when I consider everything you made, God, it just baffles me why you would deal with man. I mean, when you think of all the vast creation, you think of all the vast space that's out there. You're talking about stars that we know, that we're able to see and know about, and we can't even see to the limits of space. And we know stars that if you could cut the top off of that planet, and you could put hundreds of Earths inside it. And you think of all the vast things that God's created, and the psalmist said, when I look out and I see all that you've made in the heavens, then what is man? That thou art mindful of him, and the Son of Man that thou visitest him. Now the Son of Man here is, we're reading this out of the Old Testament, it's not coming from the New Testament. Now Son of Man was Jesus' favorite term for himself, and whenever you see that, if you're like me, your brain automatically goes to Jesus, all right? But that's not. He's not talking about Jesus here. He's talking about the heritage of man, the genealogy of man. He's saying, when I see all that you've created, God, it makes me wonder, why in the world do you consider man and those that, like as if that first man is Adam, and all those that come after him? He's talking about the children of men, the heritage, the posterity of man. He's saying, what are we? What's this human race? What's this humankind in comparison to all that you've made? Verse 4, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the Son of Man that thou hast visited him? For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, and hast crowned him with glory and honor, that madest him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things under his feet. He's just saying that all that when you look at all that God created, it's hard to imagine that God would do so much for the human. When he's done all this great work, and then he's made humans, and he's given all of his attention to the human. And the psalmist is saying, that's baffling to me. And so, in Hebrews is a quote from that, and what he's saying is, man has been made a little lower than the angels for a time. That wasn't God's original plan. God's original plan was for humans to rule over the world, to rule over his creation. Man messed that up when he sinned. When sin came into the world, God cursed things. He cursed the earth, he cursed the world, he cursed humans, and everything's been messed up ever since. And man tries to rule over that. He's still under the obligation of subduing the world. God's still given us that place. But now, instead of everything being in subjection to man, we have to fight everything to keep it under subjection. Mankind today has to fight to survive. That wasn't God's original plan. Sin's what's brought this in. And one day God's going to bring back in his original plan. And all those who've been saved are going to get to live in and accomplish that great thing that God had intended, which was for us as humans to rule over his creation. And for the creation to be in subjection to us. But that's not true for now. For now, man has to fight that creation. When farmers go out and till the ground and plant, it's a fight to grow a crop. They got to fight the weeds. They got to fight the insects. They got to fight the weather. Man has to battle there. Man has to battle the creation today. We even have to battle wild animals. I saw a show on TV not long ago where some leopard in India had killed 12 people. They had 3 professional hunters out looking for it. Couldn't find it. I mean, insects. We're having to fight the mosquitoes to keep down the malaria and to keep down the Zika. I mean, today the world is not in subjection to humans. Now, humans do a lot of great things. Human beings can accomplish a lot of great things, but we have to do it as we fight the creation. It's not in subjection to us anymore. Mankind is not ruling the world and earth. In fact, Satan has more authority and rule in the world today than we do. But that's not going to be that way forever. Revelation chapter 3, Revelation chapter 5, and Revelation chapter 20 all tell us that there's coming a day when man will once again rule with Christ, under Christ, will once again rule this world, and this world and his creation will be in subjection to us. But he's saying here, for a little while, we've been even made lower than the angels. Now, eventually, the angels are going to be our servants. Remember, he's already said that the angels are going to serve those who are inheriting salvation. And so eventually mankind will again have that opportunity to rule and to have this world and God's creation in subjection under him. But if you get to looking at it, you can think, man, angels are something else. I mean, look how great they are. Look what all they've done in God's creation, in God's work. Look how powerful they are. Look how mysterious they are. And if you look at man, and from one perspective you can say, well, we're pretty good at things. I mean, look at what all we've made. Look at what we've built. And it's been that way from the beginning. I was reading in the book of Genesis. Anita and I are reading the book of Genesis together. And in the book of Genesis, as we were reading, I'd forgotten about that chapter that lists all the generations. And it's about chapter 3. And one of the guys there was inventing all the instruments, all the musical instruments. Man's always been pretty smart, and he's always done great things. When you think of all the stuff he created, all the stuff they built in Egypt, engineers today can't even do that without hydraulics. Man's accomplished a lot of great things. I saw on TV the other day where the Boeing plant in Decatur is working on part of that rocket that is going to go out into deep space, and a place in Huntsville that's building parts of that rocket that's going out into deep space, and eventually they hope even go to Mars. 3 to 4 year mission. Can you imagine? The craftsmen and the engineers it will take to build a rocket to take man for 3 to 4 years out in space. And you get to looking at that and you think, well, man's pretty smart. He can do a lot. Well, look at verse 9. What's the first word? But. We've seen that word before. Remember, I told you when you come to that word, you turn the corner. You change gears. You got something different happening. All angels are great. And man is destined to do great things. But take a look at Jesus. All right? That's what that first sentence says. But take a look at Jesus. The question in the minds of the Jewish reader at this time would be, how could Jesus be so great over angels? How can he be so great over man? Angels don't die, Jesus did. How can he be so great? How can he be so much greater than man? He was a man and he died like man. How is he greater than man? When you think of what all man is destined to be and how he's destined to rule in the millennial kingdom and beyond, to be with Jesus and rule under him, and you think, well then, how in the world is Jesus greater than mankind? How is he greater than angels? Well, here he comes to it, verse 9. Verse 9 through verse 18 is going to tell you. He says, but Jesus. And here he begins to answer the question. And we're going to look at the first one out of verse 9 this morning. But Jesus. Jesus is greater because he is the substitute for man's salvation. Jesus is greater than all this because he's the substitute for man's salvation. Verse 9 says, but we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, should taste death for every man. Jesus is the greatest one because he is the substitute for our salvation. Ezekiel 18 says, the soul that sins shall die. Romans 6 says, the wages of sin is death. The idea of a substitute goes counteractive. It runs contrary to the minds of self-sufficient mankind. Self-sufficient mankind can say the death of Jesus was a beautiful gesture. The death of Jesus was an inspiring example. The death of Jesus was a story of a great martyr, but it's hard to say for self-sufficient man. The death of Jesus is my substitute. Jesus died a vicarious death for me. He is my substitute, because we like to think we can do something to earn our own salvation. We like to think we deserve to go to heaven. I need to do something in order to be worthy of heaven. I need to do something to help buy my place in heaven. When the truth is, Jesus is the only way to heaven, and He is your substitute for heaven. And if it weren't for Him, there'd be no way for you to go to heaven. Because you can't earn it. You can't buy it. It's by the grace of God and the gift of God through faith in the substitute that Jesus. Notice he says that Jesus tasted death. That word means that He fully experienced what it is to die. Jesus fully experienced everything about death. And the death that Jesus tasted was not just a physical death. Now, if you've seen the movie that Mel Gibson made about the crucifixion of Jesus, you have seen some visual illustrations of the horrors, the physical horrors of crucifixion. And that movie did a good job to help us understand from the physical side some of the things that Jesus endured when He tasted death. It was bloody. It was brutal. It was cruel. But there was a lot more to it than that. The death that Jesus tasted was the death for our sin. He was our substitute. The death that He died was the death that we should die for the sin that we committed. And the death that we deserve to die for the sin that we committed is far more than a brutal, bloody, physical death. It's eternal hell. It's eternal punishment. And Jesus was our substitute. Jesus took the eternal punishment that I deserved for my sin when He tasted death on that cross. There was far more than the whipping. There was far more than the thorn of crowns. There was far more than the nails in His hands and His feet. There was far more than the spear that went into His side. There was far more than the thirst and the physical agony of your shoulders being dislocated and suffocating to death as your body weight comes down on your diaphragm till you can't breathe. Because God was punishing Jesus for sin. And Jesus became the substitute for our sin. No angel could die for your sin. No angel could be your substitute. No mortal man could be your substitute. Jesus died a substitutionary death. The old word is vicarious. Jesus died a vicarious death for me. He suffered and tasted and experienced the agony of every man and woman's eternal hell. All the punishment for all the sin of mankind, that's what He tasted. He who was no sinner was punished for all the sins of others. He drank every drop of the poisonous cup of God's punishment for sin. He was your substitute. Rather than God sends you to eternal hell, God punished your sin on Jesus. Therefore, He is far greater than any angel. As great as Gabriel and Michael are in the Bible, they pale in comparison to Jesus because they could be no substitute for your sin. Of all the great men and women who've ever lived on the face of the earth and ever will live on the face of the earth, they pale in comparison to Jesus because they could never be a substitute for your sin. But Jesus was your substitute. Notice out of verse 9, this substitutionary death that Jesus died is for every man. He tasted death for every person. There's not a person seating here this morning, not a person who will listen on the YouTube who is not included in that every man. Jesus is the substitute for every person. Every man and woman, boy and girl who's ever lived, who is living now or ever will live. Their sins have been punished on Jesus already because He is the substitute for every man. Then notice, if you would, that this substitutionary death that He died is by the grace of God. He said it is for the grace of God, by the grace of God, that Jesus tasted that death. You say you didn't deserve it. I didn't deserve Jesus to be my substitute. But by the mercy and grace of God, I've got a substitute. And that substitute is Jesus. That mercy and grace comes only from a heart of love. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son." That mercy and grace that God showed me that day that Jesus was nailed to the cross and God punished my sin on Him is out of His heart of love. That mercy and grace flowed from His love. He loved me. Therefore, He sent a substitute for me. 1 John chapter 4 and verse 10 says, "Herein is love, not that we love God, but that God loved us and sent His Son to be the payment for our sins." You see, Jesus was sent out of the love of God, and it's only by His grace and mercy. You and I have no right to claim salvation through Jesus. We didn't deserve to send the Son of God to come and die for us. But because God loved you, He was merciful to you and gracious to you. And He provided for you a substitute for your sin. That's the love of God. That's why Jesus is so great. That's why He is superior to all angels and all men. Because He is the substitute for our sin. And God honored Him for it. Notice, if you see in that verse, He crowned Him with glory and honor. Because of what He did for us, He was crowned with glory and honor. In Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 21, the Bible says that He is seated at the right hand in heavenly places, far above all principalities and power and might and dominion, and every name that is named, not only in this world, but also in the world to come. Jesus is superior to all. In Philippians chapter 2 and verse 10, the Bible says that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow, of things in heaven and things in earth and things under the earth, and that every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. That's the crown of glory and honor that He received. And He received that crown of glory and honor to be above everything. Every other name, Jesus is the name above all other names, and He is the one who is above all others, angelic or mankind, because He's been the substitute for our sin. And when He who lived a life of no sin allowed God to punish Him for all sin, then God crowned Him with glory and honor and made His name greater than all names, the name of Jesus. He's the superior one. His name is great because He's done great things. Things that only He could do. And no angel or human can match what He has done. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank You for Jesus, our substitute. I pray that no person here or no person listening to this on the YouTube would hear this message and not accept Jesus as their substitute. I pray that every person is saved by the grace and mercy of God, giving to us a substitute. God, help us not to turn away from You. In Jesus' name I pray. Thanks for being here.